Hey everybody, Gromos here with another small Star Citizen update video. Again, to primarily give an update on the project's progress to those that don't follow it too closely. This time taking a quick look at 2.0 again, now that it is released on the live server, as well as take a look at a few of the things in the upcoming 2.1 version, which is currently on the PTU, the test server. Though I don't know how long it is scheduled to remain on the PTU, so by the time you see this video it might be available on the live server as well. However, in my estimation I would expect it to go through a few more iterations on the PTU first. And last but not least, I want to talk about procedural generated planets as they were shown in last week's holiday livestream. And as always, the game is still in early alpha, so you will see some bugs or low frame rates in the video. Well then, let's start with 2.0. In my last video I showed you some stuff from 2.0 from the PTU test server, as well as go over the major changes and additions that 2.0 brought, which were the first iteration of the baby PU, the mini-universe that should eventually grow into the full persistent universe, the addition of multi-crew ships as well as new starships to fly, internal physics for set ships, first iteration of FPS combat, new flight modes, multi-crew function displays and a few other things. I explained those in detail in my last video. Now, with all of those things in place, the main focus for the PTU was the increase of stability of the clients and servers, especially the servers, and we went through a lot of 2.0 builds pretty quickly. A new one almost every day. I think we were at 2.0 version K in the end. That's one of the advantages of the test server, as you can put out a lot of large builds very quickly, which you would not be able to do on the live server. Anyway, after a while a lot of the stability problems were taken care of and 2.0 made it to the live server. The focus now is still on the servers though, now to increase and optimize their performance, as they currently still cause some low FPS under heavy load, as well as some degradation over time. The client works nicely on its own for me, except some random bugs one would expect in an alpha. The servers need some more work though and are the main focus for development at the moment as far as I can tell. Now, since I already explained the additions in 2.0 in my last video, I thought in this one I'm just going to show you and comment on a quick gameplay clip from it. Just a short one and not the most impressive stuff, but I think it does show off some of the things you can do in 2.0 and the potential of it in the future. So, here we go. I'm playing with a friend which already got his ship and I'm on the way to the landing pad to meet him. And as I arrive I can see that my buddy decided to be a bit creative with his parking. So his Cutlass class ship, that's a cheaper multi-role transport / fighter, is floating upside down above the bed. Well, no matter, it's space, and up and down are relative, so we float up and my buddy is piloting the ship while I get into the dorsal turret of the Cutlass. We plan to head over to a security post Korea, a space station on which you can find set machine guns, which we want as the standard armament is a somewhat unimpressive laser pistol, and also considered to be the main PvP zone in the current mini PU. As we arrive however and approach the station we can see a constellation on the landing pad of Korea, a much bigger and nicer ship than our small Cutlass, so we decide to acquire it. And in order to do so without interruption, we want to clear the landing pad first of persons that might subject to this plan for petty reasons like that the ship is theirs. I could see someone below the constellation as we approached, but he disappeared behind it and I tell my buddy in the pilot seat to strafe to the right a bit so I can see around it. I can't find him again, he entered the station most likely, but I hear a SMG burst and I can see someone else on the higher landing pad overlooking the ship. I'm not sure if he took a shot at us or something else, but I don't want to take chances and I open fire with my turret, taking that guy out, and as he floats away we look around to see if we can someone else nearby. You have a bad field of view from the turret at the moment, but the Cutlass is scheduled for redesign, which hopefully rectifies this. Anyway, we can't see anything else nearby at the moment, so the plan is that I get out and head over to the constellation we want, while my friend hovers above and provides fire support with the ship's weapons. The Cutlass has 3 more guns on top of the turret. The pilot fires a quick burst towards the station's airlock just to be sure in case someone is hiding there, and I take the elevator seat down from the turret, and head over to the rear to lower the rear ramp. I consider for a moment to use the iris hatch in the floor, but I guess that would not make much of a difference. I pull out my pistol and here we go. We are hovering a bit over the landing pad, which has artificial gravity plating, but we are too high for them to affect me as I go out the rear hatch. I have to float down a bit towards the pad for the gravity plating to take effect and I fall down. I start to make my way towards the constellation as my friend in the Cutlass informs me that he can see at least 2 people through the large window, which are moving towards the airlock of the station, so I should better hurry up. And indeed, as I come past the airlock, I can hear it start to cycle. However, the constellation was hovering above the bed and something pushed it, so it floated closer to the station and rotated, and I can't access it quickly from here. So I turn around to get ready for an ambush as they come out the airlock. However, the occupants have bigger problems than me and my puny pistol as the Cutlass opens up with its onboard weapons. The first one goes down quickly due to heavy fire, and the pilot informs me that there's a second one inside the airlock. He fires another burst into it, and then I come around the corner ready to fire. But as I do so, I can see that the second guy is already down. I grab his SMG for some extra firepower, and then I'll get back to getting into the constellation. As I've said, I can't reach the bottom elevator or cargo ramp of the constellation from the landing pad with the position the ship is in at the moment, so I have to float up to the ship. So I run towards the edge of the bed to get off the gravity plating, while my buddy in the Cutlass keeps an eye on things and provides cover as I do so. The gravity of the plating only extends a little bit above the landing pad, so once I'm off it I can float above the landing pad towards the constellation. The bottom cargo ramp would be the easiest way to get into the ship, but I fear that it is too close to the gravity plating and I would fall down if I tried to get there, so I aim for the small round airlock on top of the constellation, which as far as I know would later be an access for docking, so it has a small docking collar on it. We don't want this to take forever, since the current baby BO is not that big yet and Port Olisar is close by, so the owners of the ship would not take too long to get back here if they wanted to. And without the constellation's turrets manned, it is not that great in ship versus ship combat. While it has some decently large M6 laser cannons for the pilot to use too, it is not that agile, and a halfway experienced pilot in a smaller ship can avoid them easily enough. Anyway, I reach the top hatch and activate the docking collar, and it activates and opens the outer hatch. From here I can get into the ship. The inner doors of those docking collars are still a bit buggy. Normally you would not use those top hatches since docking is not in the game yet. But it works well enough to get into the ship, and I fall down on the floor from the ceiling of the ship as I get into the ship's physical grid and gravity. The docking collar led to the crew area of the constellation. To the rear of this area is the cargo area, and to the front we have the command section, with the pilot seat, 2 co-pilot stations, as well as access to the dorsal and ventral turrets of the ship. So, let's get into the pilot seat and get this thing out of here. The co-pilot seats to the left and right can currently handle the shield distribution of the ship. In later iterations it is planned to have those sections fully customizable, so they can handle shields, power management, sensors and other things as required. Well, anyway, we got the ship and now we start to get the hell out of it with our prize. Mission successful. So, that is just a bit of gameplay I wanted to show from 2.0. Not the most impressive one, but I think it shows some of the current possibility and helps to imagine what will be possible in the future. Now, one thing I want to say about this clip. In the future you of course won't be able to enter someone else's ship as easily, as you will be able to lock them. There will however be some possibilities to either hack an airlock or simply to shoot a hole into a ship in some sections. So that's some footage from 2.0. Let's talk quickly about what's new in the upcoming 2.1 version, as well as the Procedural Planets. Well, 2.1 is on the PTU since Friday. Let's go over a few of the additions we have in it. As the name 2.1 suggests, it's not as huge of a jump as 2.0 was from 1.3. The primary goal is still to optimize server performance as well as general bug fixing and optimization. There is still some work to be done here, especially with the server performance, which is why I expect we will get a few more iterations of 2.1 on the PTU before it goes live, though I can't be sure about that. The 2 big changes for players in 2.1 are the addition of the Freelancer as a flyable ship and the improvement of EVA mechanics. The Freelancer is a multi-role transport, somewhat similar to the Cutlass we used to steal the constellation, but it is bigger than the Cutlass and in most variants specialized more in the transport role, with armament mainly for self-defense, though it still has some firepower to the front, while the Cutlass has a bigger focus on being a fighter with a cargo bay. The Freelancer has a 4-man cockpit as well as a dorsal turret, which is pointing to the rear, so more meant to cover the craft when retreating towards, say, a jump point, than to support offensive fire like on the Cutlass. The Freelancer is one of the oldest ships in Star Citizen, revealed very early in the campaign and went through an extensive redesign, like the Constellation, to bring it up to the standard of the newer ships in the game. And it is also the first ship of the MISC manufacturer in-game, which should mean that other MISC ships should be available soon as well, because the way this works is that ship manufacturers in Star Citizen have certain characteristics that you can find all or most of the ships of this manufacturer. Just like in reality, all cars from, say, BMW will share certain design elements, as well as having some gauges or buttons you find in different cars of the same manufacturer. With the first ship that is being built for a manufacturer, those traits also need to be designed, to figure out the typical materials or color scheme the manufacturer uses, or certain types of displays, controls, or an airlock design that is used on multiple ships of the same manufacturer. To make the manufacturer of a ship easily recognizable, and also to help performance. If there are parts of a ship that is also in use on different other ships, the CryEngine only needs to render it once and copy it for multiple ships on your screen. So, with those basics for a ship manufacturer worked out, the follow-up ships for this manufacturer should get in-game faster. Well, other than the introduction of the Freelancer as a flyable ship, the other new gameplay addition in 2.1 is an improved EVA system. It handles better and adds some proper physics and ragdoll effects to EVA, so when you float into stuff your character acts the part. Looks nice, I would say. We also got another new ship, the Saber, hangar ready in 2.1, but with all the things you can do since 2.0, ships in the hangar are nice, but not really big news anymore. Well, as I've said, other than that, 2.1 is focused mostly on server performance improvements and things of that nature. Important stuff, but that also means not that much shiny new stuff to show off, at least not yet. So, let's talk about planets. As I've explained in the last video, in 2.0 you can go from your little room in a space station to entering a ship and flying around the planet to another space station or wherever you want without a loading screen in between. An exception to that were planets, however, but it seems not for too much longer. Now, last Wednesday, CIG also did a holiday livestream, and among some other stuff, one really interesting thing they showed, and I want to talk about, are procedural planets and atmosphere, which was a nice surprise. We of course already knew that there was some R&D going on in procedural planets. That was one of the stretch goals after all. But nobody expected actual results already. This was something most considered would only come much later in the game's development after release. But it seems CIG made faster progress on this than they themselves expected, so we got a first look at it already. CIG showed both a small cinematic trailer as well as a live played example in a test level of landing on a little base on a small planet, which was about 1000 km diameter according to the video, which would make it about the size of Ceres, a dwarf planet, and a little smaller than Charon, Pluto's moon. But it's just a first look on the technology, it should work for bigger ones just as well. And I will put the link to said demonstration and trailer in the description of the video, of course, if you want to take a look. Now, procedural planets are important of course if you want the ability to land everywhere on the planet, as you can't handcraft an area of this size, it would take forever. Now, one thing that I feel need to be explained about the live demonstration. The demonstration was to show off the procedural planets and atmosphere technology. Atmospheric flight, the influence of the atmosphere on the flight model as well as heating through friction still need to be added, and were not in the demonstration. Still, I was quite impressed with the demonstration and I think it looks quite nice already. And opposed the fact that you can land on a planet everywhere you want, as well as the way the atmosphere looks already, I find quite impressive. For example, the way the sky goes from black to blue as the ship descends into the atmosphere, and also then when you're down at the station and you can see the moon in the background in the blue sky. I find such things fascinating. After all, if you look up in the sky in, say, a Battlefield game and you see a moon or a blue sky, that is because of the texture in the skybox. At least that's how it was done back when I did levels in the Unreal Engine. That was a long time ago, so it might have changed, but the basics are similar. While here in Star Citizen the sky is blue because the light scattering in the atmosphere is simulated, which is the proper reason for why the sky is blue when you look out the window, or another color on a different planet like Mars. Also, the moon you can see in the demo quite large in the sky from the ground is really there, and you can't just get in a ship and fly up there. I find such things fascinating. Oh, and one thing I want to mention here real quick. A few people, when I talk about this, kept pointing out that the moon could not appear as large in the sky as it is shown in the video, because tidal forces would destroy it. A word or two on that. First, it's a test level to show off the procedural planets, and I doubt tidal forces played a large role in its creation, so the point is moot anyway. But because it came up a few times, I disagree. How close a moon can be to the main body is determined by the so-called Roche limit. That limit is the point where the tidal forces exceed the gravitational forces of the moon, which is keeping it together. When the tidal forces exceed the gravity that is holding the moon together, they are pulling it apart. Of course, getting the actual limit in any specific case depends on many things, the density of the two bodies as well as their shape and rigidity. However, the theoretical minimum distance is generally considered 2.5 times the radius of the main body. So in case of our little 1000 km diameter test planet in the test level, that theoretical minimum limit would only be 1250 km. A moon can be pretty darn small and still look huge in the sky at that distance. Our own moon is constantly moving away from Earth, thanks to tidal forces by the way, and it is assumed that at the beginning it was about 15 times closer to Earth than it is now, and again appearing much larger in the sky when it formed than it does now. I assume this proximity and tidal forces in that case would have had some negative effect on the hospitality of the planet, but it wasn't exactly riser back then anyway. The point is they are still here, and in case of Earth and Moon, the Moon could be 20 times closer than it is now before going over the Roche limit, and that would make it look pretty huge in the night sky. Just wanted to point that out. Anyway, back to procedural planets. Now, this is of course not the first time we see technology like this, but it came as a surprise for the Star Citizen community that we have it in Star Citizen this soon, and I think it works together nicely with some of the technology we already have for some interesting gameplay opportunities. So far the plan for planets in Star Citizen was that they would have 1 or 2 landing locations only, which would be basically levels like the Area 18 landing zone we have in-game already, with the approach to it being basically on autopilot. And on the more important and populated planets like Earth, I expect this will still be the case, as you can't quite procedurally generate cities with millions or billions of inhabitants to that degree as you would have to do if you want to land everywhere on Earth. That also makes a certain amount of sense in the lore that the authorities of a large planet like Earth won't let you fly around with your heavily armed spaceship wherever you want. But for other planets, ones without cities or only smaller settlements, this opens up the entire planet to land where you want in the future, which of course is great for a number of reasons. Exploring, for example, as it might take a very long time to fully explore a newly discovered planet, and gives you a reason to use those nice rovers we saw in earlier trailers. Also, since we have FPS gameplay in the game already, we can potentially have proper ground wars too. For example, we have an upcoming ship in Star Citizen, the Redeemer, which is classified as a gunship/dropship for troops, similar to, for example, a Mi-24 Hind or the Aliens dropship in this role. Heavily armed and capable of carrying troops. So far I felt the dropship part of that would be limited in the game. Sure, the ship can protect against fighters as it approaches and then maybe provide some cover fire on the landing pad, but as soon as the fight moves inside a station or a ship, there isn't much it can do anymore. On the planet, of course, there would be much more opportunity for dropping troops wherever and providing air support as needed. There's lots of things a mission designer can do with that, for example, since I just watched Star Wars, something like the Battle of Hoth, where the main base is protected by some sort of shield, so troops need to be dropped some distance away to get there, just as an idea. The caption in the trailer calls the small base on the test level a custom base, which would suggest that base building is also planned in the future. So far we have only seen the prototype of a rocky planet, though in the RTV live stream the next day it was also mentioned that the procedural generation would eventually also include things like oceans, lakes, trees and the like. Quite interesting stuff, and I hope we see more of it soon. Well, and that's it for this little Star Citizen update video. I hope it was informative, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.